Welcome into Front Office Pros. I'm Dustin. That's Joe. We're here for your Week 7 sit starts. While you're here, if you're watching live, drop your comments. Who you want to sit start, your decisions you got to make. It's a tough week with bye weeks. We're here to help you out. Joe, how's it going tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself, Dustin?
I'm doing good. It's Thursday. We have football tonight. I don't know if I want to call it a game. We have people playing football.
Yeah.
We've got Saints Jaguars tonight. Sounds like Trevor Lawrence is going to play. How are you feeling about tonight's game before we get into sit starts?
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful that don't have to watch the Broncos again on a Thursday night here. That's what I feel good about. But as far as, the Jag Saints game, it'll be interesting. Saints have a really good defense. We'll see if, Trevor Lawrence game time decision, that changes a lot as far as the offensive side of the ball for Jacksonville. So, I don't know. It's kind of another block game on Thursday night.
Yeah, Saints have no offensive line left. They're all hurt, it seems. Trevor Lawrence is going to play. I don't know how close to 100% he is. He has a knee injury of some sort, or ankle or something, some leg. I've been out on Trevor Lawrence for a while now, so I think that's going to hinder some of their offense. It'll be interesting. It could be a really boring game, like a 6-3 game. It could be a decent game where it ends up being like 21-20. Fantasy-wise, we're going to see a lot of people having to start people in this game. Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, ETN, Ingram, Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, Kamara. Which guys do you feel the most comfortable with tonight out of this game?
Yeah, I feel most confident about having Kamara, going against the Jags defense, which is okay, but Kamara's just been getting the workload. He's the guy I have the most confidence in. Without knowing if Trevor Lawrence is for sure going to play, it's hard to have confidence on the Jacksonville side of the ball. But, I think Beathard's the backup if he does play.
Yep.
I feel probably decent about if you have to start Christian Kirk. You mentioned all these bye weeks. And then, ETN is probably a safe start too.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Kamara. If they have to dump it off because they don't have protection for Derek Carr, I think Kamara gets a lot of those short passes, and that's where he makes his bread and butter anyway. I don't really love Olave in this game. I think this is more of a Michael Thomas game just based on the secondary for Jacksonville. So it's going to be interesting. Lots of buys. 6 teams on buy this week, so we understand that you guys have a lot of questions. So if you have them, drop them in the comments. If you're watching this not live on Thursday night, we ask that you like, subscribe, drop your comments in there. We'd love to help you out. Hit us up on Twitter, Front Office Pros on Twitter. You can find me at the DUnit13. You can find Joe at Joe_FOP on Twitter. Steve is Steve_FOP on Twitter. We love helping you out, interacting with you guys, because that's what we're here for, is to help you guys make your decisions for sit starts for Week 7 of the NFL season. So let's dive right in to my smash play at quarterback, and that's Jordan Love. I'm sorry, Joe. Broncos. He's playing the Broncos. I want to be considerate of your feelings, but the Broncos are not very good on defense.
You don't. I mean, I have no expectations for the Broncos anymore. And
right, the Broncos are absolutely horrendous
yeah.
on defense. They're getting the most points to quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. I think they're 5th to tight ends. Also like Jordan Love because he's coming off a bye. So not only do they get a weak defense, the worst defense in the league, they get 2 weeks to prepare for that. Christian Watson's back healthy. We had 1, maybe 2 games with him fully, playing. So I think we can see that offense. Hopefully we get Aaron Jones back. So that offense could be coming off the bye, clicking on all cylinders. I like what I see from Jordan Love this week.
Yeah, I hope he smashes for you. Just because 2 weeks ago, other than coming off the bye, I had the same sentiment with what I thought Aaron Jones was coming back against the Raiders. He decided to stay, on the bench for another week because they had the bye week last week. And then, Watson had the 77-yard reception in that game, but otherwise he was all right. But hopefully it works out for you, man. I made that call a couple weeks ago. It didn't really help me out too much.
And I will credit Jordan Vanek, so Jordan Vanek DFS on Twitter. He put out a tweet the other day. It said Jordan Love is 5th in the NFL in percentage of passing attempts over 10 air yards. The Broncos against those throws, completion percentage 32nd, yards per attempt 32nd. Christian Watson has 6 of his 11 targets this year over 10 yards down the field. So I like that for the matchup of Jordan Love and Christian Watson. I think it's going to be a great week for this one. So credit to Jordan Vanek on that research. He pulled some numbers from, I think, Fantasy Points Data. So that is my smash play of the week for quarterback.
Yeah, how about comparable players to Jordan Love for those starts at decisions?
Yeah, so if I think for me, Josh Allen's the line. I'm starting Jordan Love over guys like Justin Herbert, who's playing Kansas City, Tua over playing Philly. Josh Allen has New England. I think he's going to just kill it there. I mean, it's tough to call Josh Allen the smash because he's a top 3 quarterback every week. But I think he has, that's my line. Like if you can start, for me, it's like Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, probably Jordan Love this week. I just don't see a ton of upside for guys like Tua who have a great offense playing Philly tough defense. Herbert who has a good offense playing Kansas City, not the worst defense in the world, not the best, but possibly a shootout. But that's my line. Is I think I'm starting him over Herbert, Tua, but just below Josh Allen this week.
Yeah, I think that's a fair line. I might sneak Tua up over him. The Eagles do have a good defensive line, but their secondary you can typically throw on and take advantage of.
You can.
But yeah, I think that's those are kind of fair comps there and remarks as far as other decisions people might have at the start sits.
Yeah, and right. If you have Jordan Love, you probably didn't draft him to be your starter, so you're probably you might have someone who's on bye. Even with 6 bye, there's not a ton of great quarterbacks on bye this week. I think Joe Burrow's on a bye. Nothing else that's really it's like Kenny Pickett. It's no one great. I mean, C.J. Stroud is on a bye, so not many people that were expected to be starters. So you probably have a tough choice this week if you have Jordan Love and someone else. Joe, who is your sleeper quarterback this week?
Yeah, sleeper quarterback. That because of some of the teams I'm by, I feel like it's kind of tough for me to pick a sleeper, but I'm going to go with Joshua Dobbs. I think potentially if you need a start, maybe you have Trevor Lawrence or, somebody like Kirk Cousins who's got some tough matchups this week. Maybe you take a flyer on Joshua Dobbs, and I think, he's been surprisingly serviceable so far this season, and I think he could possibly do worse there. And he's got a good matchup with Seattle. Seattle gives up the 3rd most passing yards per game to the quarterback position. So I think he's an interesting guy to kind of plug in for this week.
I agree with you. I think Joshua Dobbs has a decent one. So we've got Panthers, so Bryce Young. Bengals is Joe Burrow. Cowboys is Dak Prescott. Texans, so C.J. Stroud. Jets, Zach Wilson, and then Titans, so Ryan Tannehill on bye this week. Where do you see Josh Dobbs in comparison to guys like Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, and Jared Goff? Like, is there one of those guys you see as that measuring stick or that dividing line?
Yeah. Jared Goff was kind of my dividing line. I wouldn't go up there, but I'd be comfortable starting him, over the likes of Trevor Lawrence and Kirk Cousins. I'd be starting them. And there's one league, to your smash. I have Trevor Lawrence in one league, and I decided to go with Jordan Love instead.
Yeah, I agree. I think Trevor Lawrence tonight versus New Orleans is not the great matchup, especially not being 100%. Kirk Cousins plays San Fran on, I think it's Sunday or Monday night. Like, not, we know primetime Kirk, that kind of narrative. Don't really love them. No Justin Jefferson. I agree with you. I'd probably still start Jared Goff, who is playing like I expected him to be honest with you, because I was high on Jared Goff coming into this year. So I think Jared Goff has a good game against Baltimore. He gets some of his weapons. Dave Montgomery's out, but it sounds like Gibbs is going to play. Laporta might play. So I'm with you on that one. Goff is my dividing line there between him and Joshua Dobbs. So picking Goff over Dobbs, but Dobbs over Cousins and Lawrence. My stinker of the week, though, surprisingly, is Jared Goff. Listen, the Ravens are giving up the 2nd fewest points to quarterbacks. I like Jared Goff a lot. I just worry, and stinker is relative in this term. I think it's a stinker compared to what we're used for Jared Goff. I think we've been seeing Jared Goff put up these 20, 25 points games. I don't see him putting up like 4 points. I see him in the 12-point range. Like, I just don't see this high upside for Jared Goff this week. That's why I'm a stinker. I think he's still startable. I think you probably don't have a better option because I think you drafted Jared Goff to be your starter. You may have gotten lucky and maybe you have a Jordan Love, and I would start Jordan Love over him. But I just don't know if there is enough upside for Jared Goff this week based on where you started him, based on what we've seen from Jared Goff the past 6 weeks. Baltimore can't really put up points either, so I'm worried that if push comes to shove, Detroit just runs the ball a ton and eats up clock and doesn't have to have this high passing offense. So I think there's some question there for him. I just wonder what Jared Goff will be this week, and I think it's just going to be a stinker compared to what we've seen from Jared Goff in the past.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, I'm not as worried about him going against the Baltimore defense. I think I was pretty impressed with what he was actually able to do against the Bucs last week on the road, because usually he has those home versus road split games. Yeah. So the fact that he got it done last week in Tampa was pretty impressive. But I do see. I mean, it definitely could go to the run game. Detroit does like to run the ball, so could happen. And I can see it where, Goff gets less than the typical points. I'm hoping he actually scores like he has been. I've got him, starting in the league, and I have Justin Fields, and who's obviously not going to play this week. So I need Goff to come up with some good points this week. But as far as guys you're considering, starting them over, would you say like Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Watson? Where's your line there?
I think he's above those guys. I think those guys have even worse weeks. I have Goff probably around my QB 11, 12 this week. Again, he scored 22 last week, 27 the week before. I see him more in like this Green Bay game he had in week 4 where he scored 11 points, almost 12 points. I think he's serviceable. So I think I'm starting him over Cousins, Baker, and Watson. Sounds like Deshaun Watson's going to play with his rotator cuff bruise or whatever it is that he's cleared, but not pain management cleared. I don't know. It's a whole weird situation.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on there.
So I'm starting Jared Goff over those guys, but I just want to make sure we're managing expectations. If you're expecting 20 plus points, I don't think you're going to get it. I think you're going to see 11, 12 points from this week.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I could definitely see that path and see that happening.
Yeah. So, Joe, let's switch over to running back. Who's your smash running back this week?
Yeah, my smash running back. It's interesting to see the rankings with those teams on bye, and this guy was at, towards the top of the list, and I just think he's going to have a smash week this week, and that's Kenneth Walker. Walker's really been the workhorse guy for the Seattle Seahawks backfield. Despite fantasy owners liking Zach Charbonnet a lot, and then people thought Zach Charbonnet last week for the Seattle Seahawks to come out of the bye was going to get more involved, but instead it was just more of the same with Walker being the workhorse for that backfield.
Yep.
And then he's got a great matchup against the Arizona Cardinals run defense. It's a defense that is the 3rd lowest stuff rate and also the 7th highest yards after contact per attempt as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't really believe in Charbonnet coming into the season, like post-draft. I didn't think he was all that great. But I definitely think there is a room for him to be decent. I think he's a great play this week. He's done really well. I think Pete Carroll wants to have that kind of bell cow back. We didn't see Kenneth Walker really take over last year until Rashad Penny got hurt. So I like Kenneth Walker as a smash play. Again, you're expecting good weeks from Kenneth Walker. But again, we're talking smash play in terms of Kenneth Walker has been in that, 7 to 10 range every week. And I think you can see him go up there. So where's your dividing line for Kenneth Walker? Christian McCaffrey might not play, so maybe there. I don't know who else is really up in that top.
That's the thing. I saw the rankings, and I've seen them too, and and Zach, Austin Eckler being 1. But honestly, I think Walker has a chance to possibly be the RB1 on the week. I mean, we've seen him have the 2 touchdown games if he's able to find the end zone, which he usually does, and couple of big plays and get the yardage. Because that's the thing. He's been really consistent, but it's been because of the touchdowns. But if he also was able to couple that with the yardage against a weak Arizona Cardinals run game, I don't know. I didn't really have a line for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. With no Christian McCaffrey this week, Eckler looked all right, but not great. Like Kamara could have a good night, but I agree with you. Kenneth Walker can be a top 2, if not top overall running back this week. I think it's a good matchup, and I think he could smash. Which again, relative, like if you're looking at a guy that was in the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 range every week, now you're looking at 1, 2. I think that's a huge plus. So my sleeper for this week is a guy that I've been high on for a while, Brian Robinson of the Washington Commanders. Giants are giving up the 5th most points to running backs, double-digit carries in all but 1 game. I like what they're doing with them. We've seen them. It looked like John Dotson was playing special teams practice today. We've seen that with Antonio Gibson. Brian Robinson is still involved in the passing game. It looks like he's getting the bulk of the carries and half of the targets. So I love that for them. I think it's just a good matchup. Giants can't really put up points either, so I like them to just run the ball early, often, and late. So we're not talking garbage time passing for the Commanders. So it's a divisional game, so I think they're going to try to eat up clock. I like Brian Robinson this week for the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, I like him as well. We even saw the Bills, who traditionally don't run the ball a lot and don't usually run it well, but even they were able to run it against this Giants defense last week, despite some offensive struggles in that game. But it didn't really come in the run game. So yeah, I like Brian Robinson. He's had a surprisingly, he's had a really good year. I really didn't see it happen, and I liked Antonio Gibson's potential, but he's an afterthought. Yeah, but as far as some other guys you're thinking about, where do you see him with the likes of like Pacheco, Bijan, and Mostert?
Yeah, I think he's right in that mix there. I put him probably under those guys. I think Pacheco, obviously Bijan's playing outrageously right now, still getting carries, but still is splitting with Tyler Algier. But I think Pacheco, Bijan, and Mostert, just because of what's around them, I think are going to be in that 10 range. And I think Brian Robinson probably gets in that range too. So I probably might start him over Pacheco just because I don't love the game script for Pacheco against LA because they might have to pass more. So I think he's probably right there, but I think I probably start Bijan and Mostert over them. Obviously, Mostert, if he has one carry, can outproduce Brian Robinson. Like Mostert can just rip off a 70-yard touchdown and he's going to score you double-digit points, and that's all Brian Robinson can get most weeks. But as a sleeper pick, where you probably drafted Brian Robinson deep, he's probably your RB3 for your team. And with the way running backs have just been decimated this year, if you have Brian Robinson, you're super happy because you got a guy who's healthy, getting volume, and you've got a ton of guys that are injured or just not playing well right now. So, right, you've got guys on bye, you got Tony Pollard on bye, you got Joe Mixon on bye. Like, you've got a guy that you didn't expect to be in your lineup who's probably in your flex spot every week, who's now going to move into your RB2 role on your team, but probably can produce RB1 numbers this week.
Yeah, I like the sleeper pick a lot. But before we go on here, we do have a couple of comments here. Shout out to Jason for leaving us a comment.
Said, good evening, men. Who you got winning this evening? I'm struggling on whether to start Ridley or Gabe Davis in my flex. Josh Allen could have a bounce back performance after the snooze week 6. So, Joe, who do you got? Let's start. Who do you got winning tonight? Saints or Jags?
Yeah, I like the Saints tonight. Despite they do have injuries along the offensive line, but their defense is strong enough. They're the home team, and Trevor Lawrence, and not really knowing how healthy he's going to be, that's a factor.
I agree with you. I have the Saints winning. And this goes into my next part of the question. I'm not a huge Ridley believer tonight. I think it's more Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk, I think, has the different skill set that allows him to play that kind of shorter passing routes. I think he can be open a little more. Doesn't get the top coverage. So I like Christian Kirk more than Calvin Ridley. So I'm actually going to say Gabe Davis this week over Calvin Ridley. Bills are playing the Patriots. We know Bill Belichick likes to take away one weapon on the team, and for them, that's Stephon Diggs. He's going to try to take him away. That opens up a lot for Gabe Davis. I think fantasy managers are still in this mode that Gabe Davis is this boomer bust, big touchdown. That's just not who he is. He's actually a consistent floor guy. Like, he's getting 6, 7, 8 targets a game. It's just a matter of catching them. But when he does, he's being very efficient. So I like Gabe Davis. He has a lower floor than Ridley, but I think he is more consistent. I think he's maybe has a higher floor, lower ceiling than Ridley, but I like that higher floor play for you.
Yeah, I like Gabe Davis over Ridley as well. Ridley's just been really disappointing, honestly. He came out on fire week 1 and just really hasn't gotten back to that. And then Christian Kirk's involvement in the offense has only increased. He had the complete opposite. He was disappointing in week 1. Has continued to be more part of the offense. And then the question with Trevor Lawrence, hard to start Ridley. I would have more confidence in Christian Kirk as far as the Jags, but yeah, I'm comfortable starting Gabe Davis instead there.
And it looks like Jason says he does have DJ Moore as well, and Fields is mostly out. I agree. I think Fields is out, so that kind of puts me out on any Bears receivers. I'm having to start Darnell Mooney in the league just because I have nothing else available, unfortunately. we're going to see Tyson Bagent, the secret Bagent man's going to be out there. We had a discussion earlier today on the show. What do you think of this? I don't know if it's a nickname. Someone suggested it being his tagline, that after he beats him, he's like, "You just got teabagged."
Oh, jeez. I don't know about that.
You don't like that? I thought it was funny. It was clever.
Well, it's funny that it's clever, but I don't know if that's what Bagent's going to want to be remembered as. Whether he hits a big play or scores a touchdown. Maybe he does the demonstration like Rodgers used to be with the signaling to the crotch area.
Yes. So that was it was a funny thing we talked about earlier. I thought we were on Front Yard Fantasy. They were talking about this morning, or this afternoon. So I like to see what Tyson Bagent is. I was mildly impressed with him at the combine. Obviously not high end talent, but getting a shot. So I'm curious to see what that is. But I'm not starting Mooney with any confidence. It's just not a great week for that.
Yeah, I agree. I have got DJ Moore in a couple of spots, and I'm not starting him comfortably. That's for sure. I'm actually finding replacement options for him.
Yeah.
Instead of
if you can, right? This week it's hard to find replacement options. Like I said, I'm having to start Darnell Mooney because I've literally got nothing, and I had to pick Mooney off the waivers because I literally have nothing else. It was like Mooney or Alex Pierce, so it's slim pickings in that league. But that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes, Yeah. So Joe, who's your stinker running back this week?
Yeah, my stinker running back is actually a guy you mentioned, Dustin. I'm going to go with Raheem Mostert, and this isn't to say to go ahead and bench Raheem Mostert by any means. I mean, he's like he's a top 3 RB in fantasy right now. He's having a great year, but I just think this matchup against the Eagles may hurt his ceiling, and maybe doesn't have one of those great games that he's been having. The Eagles have the 8th lowest explosive run rate, and they also allow the lowest yards after contact per attempt as well. So, like I said, Philly can be exploited through the secondary, but their D-line has been good, and they're able to stop the run.
Yeah, and the Eagles' pass rush is really good, so Mostert might have to stay in and block more, which hurts them on those halfback screens, flare outs, that kind of stuff. Right, there just isn't a ton of room up the middle. It sounds like Jalen Carter's going to play, so that's also another just space eater in there. So I agree with you on expecting a stinker from Mostert. I agree. You don't bench him, but you might just go from, hey, he's not going to be a running back 2. He might be more of a flex. But where do you see him in comparison to guys like Alvin Kamara, Brian Robinson, and Jerome Ford?
Yeah. Brian Robinson was definitely my cutoff point there. I do like Kamara. And then Jerome Ford actually has a pretty good matchup as well against the Colts, depending on how much volume he gets and everything. But I think I would be willing to, I don't know. I think maybe I'd probably go Mostert over Ford, but I might be willing to roll Robinson and Kamara over him just because Kamara gets someone usually utilization both the run and pass game.
Yeah, I agree. I'm starting Kamara and Robinson over Mostert, and I'm starting Mostert over Ford. I just don't really love Cleveland's offense right now, and Jerome Ford's looked meh so far, and Kareem Hunt's eaten into that workload, even though Kareem Hunt's hot trash are getting him carries because they don't have anything else to do. So,
hey, he didn't like hot trash getting the touchdown against the 49ers. Dustin.
One fluky touchdown does not make him good. Anybody I could go out and if you gave me that many carries, I'm sure I could probably score a touchdown too if I was any way, shape, or form athletic. So let's move over to the wide receiver position. Hey, if you guys are watching and you have some sit-start questions, drop them in the chat there, or you just want to say hi and tell us how you're doing. We'd love to hear from you guys. Joe, who is your wide receiver smash this week?
Yeah, my smash player wide receiver this week, I'm going to go with Amari Cooper. And that being said, and I'm willing to go with Cooper as my smash play, even if Walker were to start and not Deshaun Watson this week. I just think the defensive matchup is that good. And then also, Walker didn't look bad against the tough 49ers defense last week. And Cooper was still over 100 yards on 4 receptions, had 8 targets in that game. And the Colts have allowed the 5th most PPR points to the perimeter wide receivers this season. I picked on the matchup last week. Ridley didn't pan out, but it was Christian Kirk. But the idea was there, just the wrong player turned out.
And that's I think that's where I'm at with process over results. Like you had a good process, it just happened to be a different receiver because of that process, right? Like we're taking shots in the dark, we're taking some swings here, but I like that process for Mari Cooper. I don't know if I'd start him if PJ Walker was starting, but I think it is
Uh,
a good
I've
matchup.
got full confidence with Walker. I mean, if you get 8 targets, 4 catches for 108 yards against the 49ers defense, playing against the Colts, I
That's
mean,
true. Yeah, I mean, I think Cooper has always been undervalued in fantasy, undervalued in the NFL. Obviously, he got traded for like a fifth round pick, and then Tyreek Hill's getting traded for 2 firsts and 2 seconds, and it was just the value that they got for Amari Cooper was great. Where's your cutoff line between him, between let's say Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown, Puka Nakua?
yeah, Puka was where I would stop, and I got Puka in like the top 10, so I wouldn't go, Cooper smashing into the top 10. I think the question at quarterback holds him down despite the good matchup. But as far as like the Jaguar receivers tonight, if you got definitely not starting them, and then Marquise Brown's got a good matchup against the Seattle Seahawks as well, but I would start Cooper over him.
Yeah, we don't. Those are all guys with other than Puka who have questionable quarterbacks, right? Like Trevor Lawrence is going to play. Kyler Murray might play. I
Nah,
don't. I
I
don't
think
know.
I think if he, I don't. I mean, they just started. He just started practicing. I think maybe next week it would be
Yeah,
the earliest.
I mean he's back at practice, which is I guess exciting. I don't know. Don't know how to make of that.
Yeah.
Um, so my sleeper wide receiver this week is Rashi Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chargers are giving up the most points to fantasy points to wide receivers. Rice is beginning to step up into that wide receiver one role for Kansas City. He's building that confidence with Patrick Mahomes. This game could be potentially a shootout. Like divisional games generally aren't, but I think there could be potential for points. Obviously, we know that the Chargers have a good offense, are capable of putting up points. He's ninth in yards created, which I really like for Rashi Rick, which is an interesting stat. So when he's getting the ball, he's creating yards after the catch. That's what we like about guys like Deebo Samuel, those yak monsters. Now, Derwin James for the Chargers is dealing with an ankle injury, so he might be a game time decision, may not play. But if he does, he has a history of locking down Travis Kelce. And the Chargers as a whole have a history of locking down Travis Kelce. Obviously, they play each other twice a year. They've done it for a while. So we could see Kelce get shut down. Taylor Swift's not going to be at the game. Let's just put that out there. So Kelce
Mm.
could have down game. He just bought a house and might be dealing with that stress. He bought a mansion because he needed more privacy, apparently. I think Rashi Rice has been a huge sleeper for me the past few weeks, and I really like him to break out this week.
Yeah, I definitely could see it. I just curious. Does the acquisition of Hardman scare you at all?
Listen, everyone listen up. It has never been and will never be Mecole Hardman season. We've seen him with the Chiefs. He's never been anything with the Chiefs. He is purely a best ball play where you just hope one week he gets a big long touchdown. He's not consistent. You can say he's got chemistry with Holmes. We didn't see it before when he was there. Obviously, they let him go for a reason. I think they brought him in because Justin Watson got hurt, might miss a game or two. It's never been Mecole Hardman season. Never going to be Mecole Hardman. He doesn't worry me at all. He's basically should be on the street. Like I don't know why teams bring him in because he's got some speed, but he's not good. Like I posted on my Twitter, who has more points, him or Julio Jones, the rest of the season, and I think it could be Julio Jones. Like I don't see Mecole Hardman doing much at all. Like if he has a catch this game, if he has 20 catches the rest of the season, I'll be surprised.
Yeah. I'm not. I agree with you. I'm really not scared off by Hardman either. I like Rasheed Rice a lot. I mentioned to Steve. Um, I think one of the shows, I forget which one we did, but I just was like, oh, I think for our trade four, Rasheed Rice was the guy I mentioned just because he hasn't really quite showed it yet, but he's shown his flashes. Last game I know was against the Broncos, but he did impress me last week. And also how many targets and opportunities he did get. Seems like Mahomes is looking his way more often. Sky Moore is not really getting targets. MVS they're not really looking at either. So it really seems like this is Rasheed Rice's wide receiver room to take over.
Yeah, and let's not forget, like Rice is a rookie. I think we've gotten enamored with these rookies like all of a sudden breaking out like 2 games in. Like I think we need to give these rookies some grace period and learning period to get into the offense. Like they're not going to come in week 1 and put up 100 yards. Like that's just not who they are. That's not who any of them were. Like even Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was the best receiver in this draft, like we weren't expecting that from him. So we need to slow our roll on these rookies. I like what I've seen from Rashee Rice, and again, literally only playing like under half the snaps. So if he could just increase those snap shares, the targets are going to go up a ton. Like he's earning targets. Targets are earned, and he is earning them in this offense. It just takes time. I think 7 weeks in, we're starting to see this turnaround. And I think if you can buy him in your leagues, redraft, especially in Dynasty, he's a great get right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. So going on the start sit side, you got guys like Michael Thomas, Drake London, Tyler Lockett. Where do you kind of set your line there?
I'm going to be bold and say I'm starting Rashee Rice over all of them. I get it. They're proven names. I like Michael Thomas this week, and he might be the only guy I might start over Rashee Rice. This may come down to roster construction. If you have a bunch of guys that are kind of these boom bust sleeper type players, then maybe I want some consistency. I'm much more of a let me get a consistent high floor guys. And I'm willing, if I have, let's say, a Stephon Diggs who's got a high floor, and I have running backs that have high floors. Let's say I got Brian Robinson, and I've got Pacheco who get volume. I've got my other receiver. Let's say I have someone like a Gabe Davis who's having some, good consistent floor, and I can throw one of these guys. If I have to make one splash play this week, it's going to be Rashee Rice. Like he's the guy that you can throw in your lineup that can get you a Tyreek Hill 70-yard touchdown type play. Like he's one of those guys that can do it. He's one of those guys that can catch the ball 10 yards past the line of scrimmage and then take it to the house 80 yards down the field. Like he has that potential to him. I just can't do it if I have all that in my lineup. I just can't have all boom bust players. But if I only have to have one boom bust player in my lineup, it's probably going to be Rashee Rice this week. So I might start him over all of Michael Thomas, Drake London, and Tyler Lockett.
Interesting. You'd even start him over Tyler Lockett, who's got a good matchup against the Cardinals.
He does have a good matchup, and you know what you're going to get from Lockett. You're going to get, wide receiver 2 numbers, but like you could see Rashee Rice break out. Like this could be the breakout week for Rashee Rice. And if it's not, like, again, if I have a solid lineup, I'm okay with taking that swing at one position.
Yeah, I do think that makes a lot of sense.
So, Joe, who's your stinker at wide receiver?
Yeah, my stinker at wide receiver, I'm going to go with Michael Pittman. And I know he's coming off a really good week. He had a decent amount of garbage time in that Jags game. They were coming back and passing a lot. It, could come down to that as well with the Browns defense. But this Browns defense just is really tough. They showed that, and they were able to shut down the 49ers offense last week, which was really impressive to me. But the Browns corners are just tough to get production against it from their wide receiver position. Most of the time, both of their corners are giving up below a 50% catch rate against them. And Denzel Ward is probably who's going to be matched up at most, and his catch rate against is like 48% right now. So I just don't expect good things out of Michael Pittman.
Yeah, I agree. I'm out on kind of the whole Colts offense outside of Jonathan Taylor. Listen, I love a good Minshew mania moment. The Colts just really don't have much playing for it. Now, they've been in talks with trading for your guy, Jerry Jeudy. So if that to me says they don't have a ton of confidence in Michael Pittman being a superstar. It also shows they don't have confidence in Alex Pierce or Josh Downs. So it just shows that they feel like they need to add to that offense, and the offense isn't good enough. So that makes me question Michael Pittman even more. I agree with you, tight matchup this week. But where do you see him in terms of guys like Jacoby Myers, Jordan Addison, or Christian Watson?
Yeah, I would definitely be playing Jacoby Myers, Christian Watson, but I would be willing to probably still roll with Pittman over Addison. We mentioned primetime Kirk and that 49ers defense before. Even with a plus matchup last week, you had warned me about that with Addison last week. Despite the Bears matchup, 3 catches, 28 yards, and a touchdown, just super disappointing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to start Jacoby Myers, even with Aiden O'Connell. Maybe not. I think this could be a week where obviously Davante Adams has been vocal the past 2 days about being a disappointment and wants a bigger role. So Squeaky Will gets the grease. Aiden O'Connell did target him a ton. So maybe Jacoby Myers takes a dip, but I'm still willing to start him on the back of what Jacoby Myers has done. I agree. I'm starting Christian Watson. So to Jason's question, Joe, how do you feel about Christian Watson against your beloved Broncos? I called for Jordan Love to be great. So
it's also Jason's beloved Broncos as
Oh,
well.
Jason's beloved. I got two Broncos fans. Oh my goodness, what are you
Yeah,
guys
we
doing?
got two Bronco fans sharing some pain here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you got Christian Watson, you got to start him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Jason, we've watched the games, right? And we just know this Broncos defense isn't that great, despite having a decent game against the Chiefs last week. But I still think all it takes is a couple of deep plays for Watson to get, and he's going to have a great week for you.
Yep. But I agree with you. I'm going to start Michael Pittman over Jordan Addison. Listen, last week we were wondering where those Justin Jefferson targets were going to go. Didn't go to Jordan Addison, even though his snap shares jumped up a ton. Like, he just didn't get it. I don't know if they're going to change this week, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I don't see Addison catching on as well as hope. People are in love with him because he scored touchdowns, but that's not a sticky stat. Like, touchdowns are fluky. He's been lucky enough to get some, I think he has 3 through 6 weeks. I just don't love Addison's volume, and I don't love the metrics on him this week. So I'm benching him if I can. Now, again, by Apocalypse, by NATO, whatever we want to call it, by Mageddon, you might have to start Jordan Addison, which sucks. I'm starting Darnell Mooney, so he's better than Darnell Mooney. So, you guys are doing better than I
am. Yeah. I mean, the NFL really has got to do something with these bye weeks. Like, why do we have these spike weeks and buys versus last week we only had 2? Like, can we just normalize this where, like, there's like 3 or 4 teams on bye every week? Or
well, so this is why, and I'll tell you, and I don't know this for a fact, but this is my assumption. They lay out the schedule for the whole year with every week having 4 bye teams. You have to have 4. It's either 2, 4, 6. It has to be some even number. The problem is that they do that in relation to teams taking the bye after their international game, so London or Germany. But teams have an option to take it or not. So the Bills did not. So when the Bills didn't take it last week, they had to move the Bills bye. That's why Bills should have been on a bye last week because they should have taken the bye after the London game. They did not. So when they do it, they have to move. That's why we get this 4, 2, 6. We have none next week. I think it has to do with these bye weeks. I think they lay it out and go, hey, here's the schedule. Hey, team, do you want the bye? No? Okay, then you're going to play this week, and we'll move you this week. I don't think they can have I get it with all these computers. We should have some fluidity, but I don't think they have the fluidity to go, okay, well, you're not playing now. We're going to – and it'd have to change everything because of that. I think it just has to do with this London bye week. That's my thought. I don't know if that's true or not, but that seems to be the case, that it always seems that after the London games, we have some teams not taking the bye. I think that's shifting some of the bye weeks there.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we got I believe we got Ravens and Titans on bye this week.
Yes.
And they just played in London, so it makes sense. Yep. But teams just shouldn't get a choice, man. You play in those international games, just give them the bye week because everyone's going to want their bye week later in the season versus early. So, of course, yes. Teams, all these London games tend to happen early in the season. Of course, these teams like the Bills are going to be like, no, I'm preparing for the playoffs. I want my bye later, keep my guys fresh.
Yes. Right, and if you're an East Coast team, it's easier to not take the bye because obviously it's not that far. Like if you're a West Coast team, you're just traveling. It's farther distance, that whole time zone issues. So they do need to fix it. I don't understand having 6 and then none. And you would think how big fantasy football is to think they would have none in Week 13, but they're still having some in Week 13, I think, this year, which is fantasy playoffs. You think they would realize, like, oh, fantasy is big business, let's move it. But that's a whole other story for another podcast. So let's dive into the tight end position. I'll give you my smash play this week, and that's Cade Otton, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Listen, I've liked Cade Otton as a rookie last year. He's got a great matchup against the Falcons, who are giving up the 4th most points to tight ends. He's got an uptick in targets, uptick in routes. He's making that connection with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has played a million times better than I thought he would. I thought for sure he wasn't even going to win the job. The Falcons don't have a great defense, but they do have good cornerbacks. So they could shut down Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, which may open things up for Cade Otton. Even if they shut down one, let's say Mike Evans is shut down with A.J. Terrell, and then we have Chris Godwin does good. That moves Cade Otton to the 2nd most targets on that team, which is where we want our tight ends to be. I think it's a great matchup for him. I see him just smash this week. Cade Otton's been in that tight end 15 range, sometimes get up to 10. I think he could be a top 5 tight end this week.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw this guy as your smash play, and I was very interested to hear the argument for it. I was pretty surprised, but Cade Otton's a guy that's kind of been growing. He's been getting the looks. He's got a role in that Bucs offense. I mean, it definitely is possible. So as far as starts, sits, and who you're taking a look at here, how you compare him to Njoku, Logan Thomas, Evan Ingram?
Yeah, definitely starting over Njoku. Logan Thomas is such an enigma because he's just been consistently meh, and then this year he was good, and then last week he should have done great, and then did nothing. I struggle to bench him because he's been so good this year, and same thing with Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram tonight has a tough matchup, so I'm probably starting Cade Otton over Evan Ingram. Logan Thomas is that measuring stick. I think I'm going to lead Cade Otton and again take that swing, and hope I can get to 10 points. Now Cade Otton is also has this weird like bad game, good game, bad game, good game, bad game last week. So like if the pattern continues, good game. So I think I'm going to start him over all three of those this week. Logan Thomas is that cutoff for me because I just don't know what Logan Thomas is because he's been historically disappointing. This year he's been good, and then he disappointed last week when he should have been really good.
Yeah, I don't. Man, I was so bummed. I grabbed him. I had already had him in one league. Just rolled him in, and I thought he was going to be a great play. And one catch for 2 yards, and just that's the life of the tight ends, man. You just never know. I feel like.
So Joe, who is your sleeper tight end?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Pat Freiermuth, fresh off the IR here. The Rams have allowed the third most receiving yards, fourth most fantasy points, and they also have allowed the highest yards per reception to the tight end position as well. Freiermuth is kind of had a disappointing start. Obviously, lands on the IR, but first week back, the Steelers were on bye last week, so coming off maybe Kenny Pickett needed that little reset button, and we'll see how this Steelers offense looks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Pat Freiermuth coming off. I mean, Pat Freiermuth should have been obviously you have your elite tight ends, and then you have this like glob of like mediocre tight ends, and you have the glob of just the back. He should have been in that glob of mediocre tight ends. Obviously, the IR hurt him this year. I think he gets back into there. I'm curious to see what this Pittsburgh offense is after the bye with him and Deontay Johnson coming back. Can they turn things around? Can they look somewhat competent as an offense? Again, I like my tight ends to be the second target on the team, and I'm not sure he gets there, but I think he's a clear 3. I don't think they have anybody after him. Najee, Jalen Warren aren't catching passes that much, so I like it as a sleeper pick. Again, sleeper relative to what he's been doing, which is nothing because he's been on IR, but relative to what you normally expect is about 6 points, but I think he can get to the double-digit points this week, so I like it for a start. Where do you see him in comparison to like Cole Kmet, Luke Musgrave, and Kyle Pitts this week?
Yeah, Kyle Pitts is kind of where I drew the line as far as where I wouldn't start him, but I'd be comfortable starting over the likes of Cole Kmet and Luke Musgrave.
Yeah, so we got Luke Musgrave. Jason asked the question: Luke Musgrave or Logan Thomas this week? Who are you sitting and who are you starting between Musgrave and Thomas, Joe?
Yeah, that's a tough call. I do like Musgrave, but he's had the plus matchups. He's kind of been up and down. I probably lean Logan Thomas despite him only having one catch for 2 yards last week. How about you?
I mean, it's just hard with Musgrave having that matchup, because obviously the Broncos are not great. But I just don't know if there's enough. Might be too many mouths to feed in that Green Bay offense between Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Musgrave, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. So I'm probably going Logan Thomas and just banking on last week being the fluke. I'm a big believer that once is a fluke, twice is a bad, or 3 times a trend. We've had a trend of Logan Thomas being good. I'm hoping last week was just the fluke. And I think he goes back to being competent and decent for us. And I hope Logan Thomas can get to 11, 12 points again.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for too. That whatever Logan Thomas dealt with last week, just a flash. I mean, they were up in that game surprisingly for most of the game there too. So I think that could have factored into it. And then Musgrave, he is a rookie tight end. He could emerge against the Broncos, but he also might stink for you. I just have more confidence in Thomas.
Yep. And so I'll give you my stinker tight end, and this might shock some people. It's TJ Hockenson of the Minnesota Vikings. It's a tough matchup against 49ers. We know that. It's prime time, so prime time Kirk. We know that narrative. 49ers are giving up the second fewest points to tight ends. No Justin Jefferson last week. We were expecting someone to step up, and no one really did. I'm wondering if another week of practice pushes Osborne and Addison into that realm. I don't think Addison did. I think it's more Osborne. I just don't feel comfortable with him as my tight end this week because I just wonder, again, stinker comparative to what he's been. He's been a top 3 tight end. I think he falls down to the tight end 10 to 12 range, maybe a little lower as guys step up. If we have smash plays from Cade Otton, We have Pat Fryermuth come back to the fold. I think he just drops down. I think he's still serviceable for your fantasy team, but I think he's just going to drop down and have a stinker compared to what we're expecting from TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, it definitely could be the case, and the 49ers just have really good linebackers.
They really get everything.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong, but their linebackers really control the middle of the field where a tight end would normally sit. So I do think that'll be tough. But how do you rank them to guys like Evan Ingram, Musgrave, Pitts, and Jonnu Smith?
It's hard to bench TJ Hawkinson for any of those guys, right? Evan Ingram's got a tough matchup. So it's a tough matchup versus a tough matchup versus, and I look at it and go, who's got the better quarterback? I think Kirk is better than Lawrence in general, but that's tough. That's my measuring stick. I think I'm starting Luke Musgrave over Hawkinson just in hope that good matchup is there. Pitts and Jonnu Smith, I'm probably starting those guys just because they've been good. Again, it's bold, especially on a week like this where we have lots of guys on bye to go, hey, I'm not starting my starter TJ Hawkinson. Ideally, you would like to throw Ingram, Musgrave, Pitts, or Jonnu Smith in your tight end and move Hawkinson into your flex. That's, I think, the ideal world because I think he's better than a lot of flex plays out there this week. But I'm probably starting most of those guys over him, but he's right in that mind. I think Evan Ingram's the line where I think I'm going to start TJ Hawkinson because that matchup tonight is not great with Trevor Lawrence being not 100%.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, an advantage to, put in a guy like Hawkinson in your flex too. I mean, it's kind of plays later. If you like any of those Sunday or Monday night too, you might be able to slide in. If you're chasing points and you feel like you got another ceiling play that could be scoring more than Hawkinson, maybe you make the switch there.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you can put him in your flex and then you are down by 20 and you're like, well, Hawkinson's not scoring 20 points, let me throw in who's the Sunday night game? It's they're the Monday night game. So let's say you have to throw in someone like a Julio Jones if Devonta Smith doesn't play on Sunday night because you need to chase the points. I'm okay with that, or a Ronnie Bell or something, to try to chase some points. I'm okay with that. Like, I think that's a smart strategy from you to put him in the flex and allows you to chase points if you need. If you're down by 20, Hawkinson's probably not scoring you 20 on Monday night. So maybe you do chase Julio Jones or some of those other like bigger upside guys that can have a big breakout. Joe, let's finish up. Who is your stack of the week? So our stacks are quarterback and either a pass catching option, so a wide receiver or tight end. Who's your stack of the week for week 7, Joe?
Yeah, for week 7, I'm going to go with Geno Smith and Tyler Lockett. In that nice matchup of the Cardinals.
That's interesting. I like Geno Smith. I think I prefer DK Metcalf over Lockett personally, but you like Lockett, huh?
I'm always a Lockett guy over Metcalf.
I generally am too.
I feel like this is the Deontay Johnson versus George Pickens argument.
It is.
Just that.
It very much is.
The guy that you just want that's generally more involved in the offense versus like the couple of big shots down the field that are more exciting, and that's what the fantasy fans get excited about.
Yep. And my stack of the week, Jason O'Neill, you'll like this one. It's Jordan Love and Christian Watson. I think that matchup plays up well. I think the weakness of that defense suits Christian Watson over Romeo Doubs. Christian Watson's, I think, finally fully healthy. I think last week he wasn't fully 100%. I think as does too Bill Chemistry. Again, he can give you those splash plays. So Christian Watson might have 4 receptions for 120 yards. And 2 touchdowns, and Romeo Doubs may have 8 receptions for 80 yards. Like, it is kind of similar to Lockett and Metcalf, where Watson's kind of the big play, but I like it based on the matchup with that defense. So I'm going Jordan Love and Christian Watson this week for my stack of the week.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how much Pat Surtain gets matched up on Christian Watson, or I tell you, Dobbs or whoever gets to go against Amari Mathis, man. That's going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, and I think they do Mathis, and I think they roll the safety over to help Mathis out. So I think that could be Christian Watson, right? Because they go, okay, we'll just roll Mathis on Watson, have the safety come over and help. They have a really good safety whose name I forget right now because I don't play IDP.
Justin Simmons.
Yes, exactly. Right. And so I think Surtain could be on Dobbs, who's more of that target hog and can be shut down. So that's why I like the matchup a little more for him as well. So this has been Sit Starts for week 7. From Front Office Pros, I'm Dustin. You can find me at Twitter at the DUnit13. Joe, where can they find you at?
Yeah, at Joe_FOP on X.
Yep. And don't forget to like, subscribe, drop your comments below. We appreciate you guys hopping in. Yeah, we'll be here every week, 7 p.m. Eastern, right before the game Thursday nights, doing sit starts every week. Have a great night. Enjoy the game tonight.
Yep. See ya. And thanks, Jason, for all your
Oh, yes. Yeah,
feedback and comments.